And we are live. Hello, friend. Welcome to this live stream. Welcome back. If you were here earlier today, let us know in the chat if you are revisiting us today. So if you do not know, this live stream is part of COVID, which is the general public's response to the lack of Costume College, which is the annual costume makers conference that usually happens this weekend every year. Since that obviously cannot happen, we have just been putting on educational costume and dress history related workshops that are happening throughout costume side of YouTube this weekend. So this is part of that. This is not, a casual like YouTube-y, like, hey, what's up you guys, the live stream. I am here today with my wonderful colleague. Can I call you that? Because we work in the same field, is that the term? Raissa Bretaña, who you probably may or may not recognize from those glamour, is this historically accurate videos. Oh, just so that you know, the Zoom chat is approximately 30 minutes lagged. So we will see
30 seconds.
Oh my God, that's not the thing. 30 seconds lagged. So we will see your comments approximately 30 seconds after we've spoken. Anyway, so before we get started with the stream, there are just a couple of like basic housekeeping things that I should address just in regards to the live stream. So we will be taking questions for the most part at the end. I have my fabulous assistant Betsy, who's behind the scenes. She's moderating for us, so if there are any trolls, hopefully she'll be taking care of that, but she's also going to be collecting questions for us that we'll hopefully be addressing at the end. We will try and answer as many as we can, but depending on how long we go, and sometimes the questions tend to overlap, so we'll try and cover as much as we possibly can within the time span of your attention spans, because I realize you have other stuff to be doing too. So we will be answering those at the end. We will not be really keeping up with the chat until the end of the stream, if that's cool. You're welcome to have conversations with yourselves and, consult, ask questions, have fun in the chat. But the other thing is, so the super chat feature has been left on. I've got a fantastic team of people working behind the scenes to get these live workshops on my channel at least happening. So I've got Betsy running things behind the scene. I've also got a fantastic transcriptionist, Jack, who is live transcribing these live workshops in an effort to get captions up as quickly as possible, because the usual captioning service that I use takes days to get long videos back to me. And I realize that some of you need captions as soon as possible. And since we don't have the tech at the moment to have live captions feed through Zoom and onto YouTube, we're doing the best that we can feeding things through. Anyway, and then as well as compensating our featured guests, because unlike Costume College, we do believe in paying arts chapter. Oops, am I allowed to say that? Too late. So that's pretty much it. We are here for fair wages, as we will probably be discussing later in this chat. So super chats are very, very kind. If you feel compelled to give those, absolutely no pressure. We will be prioritizing comments based on the relevancy to the content of this chat, not based on who's promoting their comments, basically. So if you do give a super chat, please just know that that is purely a donation that is very much appreciated.
Super love.
So without further ado, I think that's pretty much it. I totally went off my notes, but hopefully I didn't miss anything. So Raissa,
later. Yes.
Yeah, we'll just put it in the comments later. So Raissa, would you like to begin by telling us, well, first of all, like introducing yourself, telling us a bit about what you do within this wonderful world of dress history and how you got here? Because the reality is, as we will discuss further, this is an extremely new field. There's no set path to you want to become a doctor, you take this many years of med school, and then you do your residency, and then you do whatever else you doctor folk do, because I don't have any experience in that field, because obviously I'm not a doctor. But there's nothing for that in dress history. So everyone's path is completely different. We're all just kind of flailing, but walk us through your present situation and how you got here so that maybe people can learn from that.
Okay, so to start off, the reason why we arrived at this topic is because the question that I get asked the most by my students, by people via DM, email, is how did you become a fashion historian? Or how do you become a fashion historian? And as Bernadette said, there's no one way to do this. So I would just like to share my own personal journey because there's no right way. But yes, hopefully you can take from it what you will. Okay, so right now I call myself a fashion historian, and we will talk about different
have I just been calling you a dress
later.
historian the whole time?
So yes, I use fashion historian. I just feel like it's more accurate to the type of work that I do. And currently I am an adjunct instructor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, where I teach fashion history courses. And I also teach fashion history at Pratt Institute. So that's like my grown-up job. But as I will, talk about today, I, do about a million jobs. And that's the nature of the field right now. It's very much based in gig work. And I am very accustomed to that because I came out of the entertainment industry. So if we start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. I started
backgrounds.
What?
We both have
theater backgrounds. Yes, we're both total theater nerds. Yes. So I started in theater, performing, in community theater when I was in middle school. And I started to develop a love of costuming. And I was very lucky that my first mentor, this is going to be a running theme of this conversation, is I've had many, many wonderful mentors. So my first mentor took me under her wing when I was 12 years old and showed me how to do the costumings. And so when I decided to pursue this as a career, I grew up in Los Angeles. I moved to the East Coast and I enrolled in the Bachelor of Fine Arts program at Boston University for costume design. And kind of just to give you a feel of what that curriculum looks like, it is very rigorous and it is very skills based. So, our first year I was taking 18th century corsetry, and then the second semester, so we always did undergarments, and then the next semester we would do the outer garments. And then we would do fabric dyeing, distressing, millinery, costume rendering, scene painting, lighting design. And so I came out of that program with a lot of hard skills, which I am eternally thankful for. And so while I was doing that, I would go back to LA during the summers of my undergrad, and I would freelance, day playing as a PA on various film, TV shows, in the land of the studios. And well, I feel like one of the real catalyst was an internship that I had at Western Costume Company.
Oh, wow.
The oldest costume house ever, founded in 1912. And I landed there because I thought I was going to be an Oscar-winning costume designer. And I wanted to work in the research library so that I would be able to work with Oscar-winning costume designers, so I could meet my heroes and understand how they worked. And so I worked there for 2 summers in a row, assisting designers with research for film and television. I got to work on some amazing stuff. I did research for Mad Men, American Horror Story. Gosh, what are some of the other ones? So long ago. But the important part is, as part of that internship, there was also the collections management component, which really introduced me to museum practice, because nestled within the research library at Western Costume is what they call the Star Collection. And it is a secret closet full of, treasures from Hollywood history. And I helped to overhaul this collection, by watching a million movies and helping to identify pieces from films from the silent era to present. And so I will also be very honest and say these internships, they were all unpaid, which is going to be a topic of conversation, I'm sure. So I wanted it bad enough that I had to hustle. So on days that I wasn't at that internship, I was working as a PA, but also I was working retail. I worked at Victoria's Secret in Beverly Hills, measuring people for bras, because I said, like, I know how to make those. I can do this. But so I graduated with my Bachelor of Fine Arts in costume design. And, you know, as I'm sure many people will understand, you get out of college and then you say, now what? What do I do? So I was very lucky that I did a professional apprenticeship at the Huntington Theater Company in Boston. And, you know, there they really helped to solidify those hard skills. I did a lot of draping and tailoring and millinery. And I didn't feel like this was it. And it was very disappointing because, you know, I started doing this when I was like 12 years old. And, you know, 10 years later, I graduate from college and suddenly I realized, like, is this the career that I want? So, you know, as, you know, every 22-year-old has a personal crisis. I was very lucky to meet my second mentor. And down the street from the Huntington Theater Company in Boston is the Museum of Fine Arts, which I would frequent regularly. It's a magnificent museum. And just as I was, you know, questioning, am I going to stay in theater? Because I was doing theater, ballet, opera, and it was all just so tiring and so poorly funded. I know, so I went to museums. But I went to a lecture with the curator of fashion arts. And it was for the exhibition called Think Pink, about the history of the color pink in fashion, in gender studies, and material culture. And I was a big fat nerd, and I sat in the front row and I took notes. And suddenly I realized, whoa, you can do this? Which is one reason we wanted to have this as a topic, that moment of, oh my gosh, you can do this? And so afterwards, there was a little, you know, cocktail reception, and you know, I was just had my little pink drink, and the curator approached me and said, you know, hi, thanks for being a nerd. And I'm pretty sure I spit out something like, how do I grow up to be you? Or something totally unhinged like that. And you know, God bless her, she said, you know, it's very hard. It's all about higher education. She said, what are your credentials? And I just said, all I've got is a BFA in costume design. But I said, I know a lot about Hollywood history because I did this internship at Western Costume. And she said, well, incidentally, the next exhibit I'm curating is on the history of Hollywood costume.
Oh my God.
I know. And so she basically gave me her card and she said, have lunch with me next week. And during that week, I read every book she published. I studied up and I made sure I knew, you know, everything that I could going into this meeting. And, you know, we had lunch and she said, how would you like to be an intern here? And I said, yes, oh my gosh, yes. An intern so the department is textile and fashion arts. But of course, it was an unpaid internship. Here we go again. So in order to be able to do that internship, I got a job working in the gift shop at the museum. So I split my time between the gift shop and doing research for these exhibitions. And I did that for a couple of years. And I hit a ceiling. And it got to the point where I could not progress my career any further without higher education. And that's eventually what pushed me to attend graduate school. And again, God bless these mentors, all for of the curators within that department attended this program at the Fashion Institute of Technology, from, you know, spanning many different years. And so they basically wrote me letters of recommendation and shipped me off to New York. They said, you have to go get this degree before you can go any further. And so packed up my little bags and my little dreams, and I came to New York to go to graduate school. And so I started that program. The full title, it's the longest degree program ever. It's called Fashion and Textile Studies, History, Theory, and Museum Practice. And it was all of that. Just as I was very thankful to come out of Boston University with hard skills, another reason I chose FIT is because it did focus on hard skills. So we had to learn about textile conservation. We had to learn about collections management, about the proper care and handling of objects. And so, you know, everybody wants to be a curator, everybody wants to be a writer or a lecturer, but I was lucky that I had these other skills to use, because it's a hustle. So, gosh, then what? Grad school. But throughout grad school, you know, I had to keep myself alive in New York. So I went back to the theater. So I actually worked with a shop in the garment district that made hats for Broadway productions, television, and thank God for those millinery skills, because I would go to class and this hat shop was 2 blocks away, and then I would run back and I would make hats, and then I would run back to class. And so it was a lot of that for my grad school years. And that's when I really started to you know, make connections that would give me the network that I had today. So it was a lot of freelancing on, you know, ballet, opera, theater, same type of stuff. And that's when I got really the graduate internship that would shift, that would change courses for me. So that was at the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is the dream. But again, unpaid internship. So what did I do? I hustled. I worked all of those other jobs just to be able to afford to live the dream and work at the Met for free. And then finally, when I finished my master's program, I put my foot down and I said, I'm not going to do this for free anymore. I can't. I have a master's degree now. I can't. And so I had all this strange set of skills, and luckily the work found me. And so I started consulting again on film and television, specifically research for historical productions. And all of that was possible because of the designers that I met at Western Costume, you know, how a very long time ago, almost 10 years ago now. And so now I do a lot of that. Recently, I consulted on Pose, and I was the researcher for Hollywood, both of which are Emmy noms. So very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yes, and also doing the Glamour series, which I've been doing since January of last year. And so that's kind of a thing that I pick up and put back down. But I guess my main focus right now is teaching, and that's where my third mentor comes in. She was my professor in graduate school, and you know, I was the nerdy student that went to every office hour session just to chat. But she really took me under her wing and taught me how to teach. And I'm very lucky that the class that I first started teaching is called The History of Costume and Fashion in Film. So I feel very lucky that I get to use both of these degrees, and I know how rare that is. And so a lot of it is making the career that I wanted for myself. And yes. I've got a long way to go, but I'm very much in the early stages of my career, but that's how I got here, I guess. was very long-winded. I apologize.
Yeah, well, you know what? We just had this conversation before we got on the live where Raissa was like, my explanation is going to be really long. And I'm like, trust me, mine is too, because there's no like path. Again, there's no like, I went to school and I studied this, and then I got out of school and I studied this, and then I got my first job. It doesn't work like that. It's all this whole crisscrossing of where you go and who you meet. It's who you meet. I cannot stress that enough.
And we were saying right before we got on that that I would not. I am standing on the shoulders of the strong women who put me here.
Absolutely.
As I said, I've had many mentors who have advocated for me, pushed me, and I'm deeply grateful for them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so how did you get here?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So we kind of have appallingly different stories and also weirdly kind of similar stories. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I also started out in theater, but I started out on the East Coast. I actually moved to New York because it was like my lifelong dream to be a costume designer on Broadway. That's what I wanted to. Well, first, actually, this is relevant. First, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I was hardcore into that. And I was making all the movies when I was little, and I was so set to go to NYU for film school. I actually didn't get into NYU. So when I didn't get into NYU, I still moved to New York, but I had a job on Broadway. And this is actually probably important because every single job I have ever gotten, Broadway, the School of Historical Dress, all the little random bits and pieces of jobs that I've done are because I have had an idea, known a person, admired a person, hunted for their email address and asked for it. Nobody just like walked up to me and offered me a job on Broadway. And I feel like in a weird career like this, there's no one like walking up to you and offering you jobs. Like kind of like what Raissa did with the curator. Like you actively had that conversation with that curator, no matter how dumb you think you sounded in your head, like fangirling over whatever you said. That's what got you the job. So that's all that really matters, right? So I actually spent a number of years working in theater. Again, my first job for a couple of months was an unpaid internship, which maybe we'll have this conversation in a bit because there's a lot of privilege that we can highlight in that whole realm of things, because we'll talk about that in a bit. Because anyway, so the first job that I had was an internship. The second job that I had, so I went from that costume intern position to being a costume assistant, which is like the union paid version of, you know, working on design teams for Broadway. I wasn't making the clothes. I was, you know, working for the costume designer who designed the teams, designed the clothes, and then, you know, opening night, our contracts end, we move on. So I did that for a couple of years. It was really thrilling. It was very fast paced. It was like one show overlaps the other. So like before I knew it, like 5 years had gone by. And then I actually, mentor number one, who I met because she was the best friend of the costume designer who I was working for, who was also a mentor of mine. He used to work at NYU. This woman who became my mentor taught at NYU and they were best friends. So I got to know her just personally out in the world. And she taught at NYU. So I was like, oh, it's always been my dream to go to NYU. I reapplied and I got in for the theater design program. So also, you know, if you have a dream, put it out into the world. And if it doesn't happen, maybe it'll happen later. So I ended up going to NYU. I had accepted the first term of this semester there. And I told my boss, you know, I can only kind of be like part-time-ish. It wasn't part-time. I was still working full-time and doing full-time at school. It was a dumpster fire. I didn't sleep. Don't recommend, but also like, it's what got me here. So like, whatever, what can you do? So I did that for one term before my boss booked a really big Broadway show that wasn't supposed to come to Broadway, but then suddenly did. So I was like, I have to take a term off and go back to work. So that's what I did. And then during that semester that I was off over the summer. So the woman who was my mentor very tragically passed away all suddenly. And so it was kind of like mutually agreed between the two of us, my boss and myself, that like, I need to go back to school because that was the one thing that she wanted. Like she kept begging me. I know Broadway's the big shiny world out there. And I know it's like a siren's call, but please, 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 you need to get your college degree. This is really, really important. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it one day. You know, I'll do it like in between shows. It's fine. I'll do like a semester here and a semester there. But then I was like, no, I need to, because if I walk out on the road like tomorrow and get hit by a cab and I have to see her in the afterlife and admit that I never got my college degree, I'm like never going to be able to live with my dead self. So I like took all the time off and I just went back to school. And while I was at school, I had another mentor who obviously took over from her, and I was a mess. I was broken. I like didn't know what to do with my life. And she was the one who kind of like picked me up. I had always had an interest in dress history because as a costume designer, like you sort of have different interests and like focuses in like life, I guess. So I had always taken an interest, sorry, I'm like mildly choking. Calm down. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I had an interest in the like dress history side of things, so she kind of noticed that. And in my final year, there was always a question because we have to, like, as part of the curriculum, we have to have an internship to like graduate, but most of the time people have an internship with like a designer on Broadway. And I had already been paid to do that work. So like it made no sense for my educational career path to go back and do that. So there was this whole question of like, what are you going to do that's actually beneficial? Anyway, so my second teacher, professor, mentor had a friend of a friend of a friend of whatever, who was the principal of the School of Historical Dress in London. And they were in touch, and the principal basically said like, well, we've just moved buildings. We're not really working right now. We're not running classes, but we're working on the 5th Janet Arnold book. If maybe she wants to come and help on that. And I was like, I'm so unqualified to do this, but yes, I guess. So that happened. It was supposed to be a quick, like 4 weeks or something. That's just like, you know, tick the box, work, study. But I ended up staying for the whole summer. And then when I graduated, I ended up continuing to collaborate with the school on future book work. So that was sort of my final like mentorship realm of like, I had come from the world of theatrical costume making. I had really little sewing experience because they don't always teach that in design school. So
I'm shook.
Yeah. But at the school, you know, they were obviously, because I was kind of the only one there and I was the youngest member of the team, she, you know, would work with me to make sure that I understood like, here's how original practice stitching works. That's not necessarily like modern sewing that you would have learned. It was kind of terrifying because it's like, I'm going to teach you how to do this thing that's going in a Janet Arnold book. So it's like, it's one of those situations where you learn by like being thrown into a situation and there's no room to fail, which I feel like is like kind of a lot of this world. But so that was kind of an on and off collaboration for a little while. But again, like the school is a very small institution. Everyone who works at the school has extracurricular freelance jobs. No one really works there full time, especially because we hadn't read the book and there was no like sustainable income to the school. So I was like, this work with the school is kind of my dream job. I get to sit and study the actual history of dress and make stuff, which are like my two passions. How do I do this full time? Because that doesn't really pay a living. And also like they can't sponsor a visa because, oh my God, that's a whole, I'm not even gonna get into that. But so meanwhile, while I had been doing all this back and forth collaboration with the school, I had been posting some of my original practice, my personal experiments on Instagram, and people were asking questions like, you're doing what? This is insane. Why? You can't do that by hand. It'll take you 9 years. And it wasn't until I was like, oh, you know, I like making movies. I'll put a camera over what I'm doing and actually show you. And then I started putting it on YouTube. And well, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it turns out a lot of people are really interested in that. And I also sort of rediscovered a passion for storytelling, for visual storytelling, and for filmmaking. So it turns out you can have a job on the internet. The internet is a whole untapped, equally untapped field of possibility. I mean, talk to Kathy Hay, who literally invented a job of like, you know, within the costume field, but like through the internet, and that's her living. So I had also a lot of back and forth and bouncing around to places, but ultimately I have now ended up in this one very sustainable paycheck location, which is completely different from what Raissa does, who is very much like on a more freelance basis. Like I do this and I do this.
I'm going to pay my rent this month. I don't know.
Right, right. So that's kind of how I got here.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's such a good story.
I don't think I've ever actually told that. And I'm sure it was like really disjointed and all over the place.
I mean, I think the moral of the story is that theater kids are the best.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's how we got into found our little nooks in this field. That, you know, I feel like I can say we both created for ourselves.
Yeah.
So yes, we move on to the next point.
Yeah, the next topic. We're like self-running this whole thing.
So I have we worked on a little outline. So my little lesson plan. So
she's the teacher, not me.
So we wanted to talk about the field of fashion studies, kind of just the state of it. Because, you know, we both get a lot of questions about, you know, are there a lot of jobs? Like, how do you do this? And so as Bernadette said, this is a very young field. There's not really a precedent. And I guess this is the point where we talk about the difference between fashion history and dress history.
Yeah, we probably should address that.
Okay.
You're a fashion historian and I'm a dress historian.
Yes. But you can go first. Why are you a dress historian?
Okay, so I call myself a dress historian primarily because I come from the School of Historical Dress, who call themselves dress historians. So like by extent, I feel connected with that. Which, by the way, I should disclaim, not this whole YouTube channel, not affiliated with the School of Historical Dress. They do not necessarily condone what I do. We do different stuff here that they do there. But anyway, that's just like those wonderful people are responsible for like sparking my interest in this. But anyway, so I'm a dress historian because I like to study the history of dress, not just that which is fashionable. But I also cut off at World War II, and prior to that, the word fashion was more prominently a verb.
Yes.
Not
yes.
a noun.
Yes, and I honestly, I call myself a fashion historian for ease, because people know what that is. Sometimes when I use the term, the technical term dress, people think I mean like,
yes.
But I focus on fashion rather than dress because I come from an art and design history background. So it is about the fashion system and the commerce and all of the aesthetic movements that underlie that history. I guess if I had to put it succinctly, I feel that fashion history is a bit more sociological or cultural, whereas dress history is a bit more anthropological. Would you agree?
Yeah. I have no reason to disagree.
Well, I mean, that's the way we were presented with it. Whenever we would visit museums in grad school, that, we would go to the anthropology department and then we would go to the, fashion department.
Right.
But
yes, we should point out that I don't have like higher level training in this. Technically.
You have a BFA.
I have a BFA, yeah, but not like master's or doctorate or anything.
Well, I know it's a topic of conversation in the field. I mean, I went to grad school because, again, I felt like I hit the ceiling of what I could do. Right. But I feel like I'm coming up on that ceiling again, and that's when I'm due to start a PhD. I did know that I wanted to take some time to actually build a body of work before I did that. Also, school fatigue. but no, I'd say just recently in the past few years, it has become more common to get a PhD. That being said, relatively young field, and it was only in the later 20th century that dress or fashion history became considered a viable academic topic. Yes, and when I pose the question to my students, I say, why do you think that is? Why is it that painting and architecture and sculpture, these are all high art, and there's still this ongoing debate: is fashion art? There are a lot of people that go to fashion or dress exhibitions and they say this isn't art, and my answer is because of the patriarchy, as most things are. Because historically, the disciplines of architecture and painting were male-dominated industries, whereas textile art or fashion, that was seen as women's work. And so it really, there have been theorists, really sociologists and cultural historians who have written about it, but we really start to see the first higher level education programs emerging in the later 20th century. And I thought I would give a little tour of at least the New York based ones. There is NYU, which today, I believe it's costume, the program title is Costume Studies. And if anybody is from that program, please speak up. But it's my understanding that it is a little more theory-based. There's FIT, the Fashion and Textile Studies program. There's one at Parsons that is also very theory-based. But we're finally at this point where there are more options. 10 years ago, there weren't all of these options. And I attribute this to this growing interest in the field of fashion or dress history. And I feel like there's a wave coming, and I'm trying to ride this wave just because of this greater cultural awareness for it. Because fashion and dress history are showing up in popular culture, things like the Met Gala, where people, the Met Gala has been around since the 60s, but this understanding that there is this yearly exhibition that causes this, cultural phenomenon. And so the field is growing. So that's good news. And this growing interest in the field, demands more content, specifically, on YouTube, podcasts, and suddenly there are all of these avenues from which you can consume fashion and dress history that didn't exist previously. So it's an exciting time. Yeah, do you have any feelings on that?
Okay, so yeah, well, admittedly, I feel like I reside more on the pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's the wrong word, not pop culture, the mainstream side of dress history. So I like to say that what I do is not necessarily academic, but I feel like I have found my role within the field of dress history as the sort of gateway drug. Like, I have found that my position within this is to offer you the fun, pretty videos to make you realize that, hey, dress history is a field. And then you look further into it, or you get further, or you're just aware of it. You're aware that the history of clothes is a thing. So was that that was not relevant. I was going somewhere with that, and then I just lost it.
I love that.
But okay, so that was kind of linking on to the mainstream versus academia sort of thing.
And it is, I'd say with the Glamour video series, it's taken me a while to learn how to code switch, between the front-facing fashion history that is, yes, more entertaining and more shiny, and then when you get into the nitty-gritty of academia, where you're reading these sociological texts and it's not sexy. just reading subcultural theory. But it, my goal in finding my role in all of this is finding a way to bridge those two worlds. And I'm learning and I'm trying, but I do think that there's a greater movement towards that.
I think so too, because I mean, look at the two of us. We've both come from theater and gone into the world of dress history, but the School of Historical Dress is no different. They are called the School of Historical Dress, which sounds very intensely academic in the terms of, studying dress history, but they all came from the Globe. They all came from Shakespeare's Globe, which, I mean, yes, it's theatrical, but at the same time, they were the people who were, for a couple of the productions that they were doing a while ago, it was their sort of mission to experimental archaeology reconstruct Shakespeare's plays as they would have been done in the period. And that involves hand stitching all of the clothes. So there's a whole team of people over there who have this whole understanding of historical dress that no one else, because they did that for years, no one else has that. And they're the people who went on to found the School of Historical Dress. So there is sometimes a little bit of discrepancy between the academics versus the entertainers. And I feel like there's a growing motivation to try and bridge that gap, because
I feel like the Venn diagram is getting closer.
Right. Well, the entertainers have insight that the academics don't necessarily have, as in terms of practical experience. But you also have entertainers like costume designers who don't have time to go doing original practice research, that need the academic study to be fed to them, because that's not their job,
And I mean, in like the golden age of Hollywood, like during the studio system, there were research departments, but these days, a lot of costume designers go to places like Western Costume to outsource their research. And I'm very lucky that there are designers that I work with now who just call me and say, "Here's a script. Can you you research this?" And it's a very different kind of research. And I'm thankful that I was rusty, but I still remember how to work that way. But period film and television is usually the other gateway into
yes.
realizing that this field is a thing. So yes, I'm
that's kind of like how we got into it, because there were no costumers. It was just you watch pretty period films and TV and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty, and then you realize it's all completely historically inaccurate and you're like, oh.
Wow. Let me see, let me look at our little thing. Have we gone completely off topic?
No, we're actually really on topic, but we sort of covered the next bit. But we wanted to talk a bit about the hustle. What's the reality of working in this?
Hustle.
Or of getting into this field.
Yes.
Because it's not sunshine and it's fun if you love it, but it's not easy. You don't just move to New York and walk out onto the street and somebody walks up to you with a little golden parcel saying, "Here's your first Broadway show." It doesn't work like that. And people often get really angry at the industry. Not just this, but every other industry. Those people had it easy. Those people were just lucky. They just were in the right place at the right time. But in reality, okay, there is some luck and there's some privilege, but there's a whole heckin' lot of hard work.
Yeah. And putting yourself in the right place at the right time, which I very much believe in. So, based on my little story that I told earlier, you have to really, really want it. You have to hustle to do all of those unpaid internships. I couldn't afford to do those unpaid internships. I had to support myself. And so in order to do those, I took on a million jobs. And that's honestly what has prepared me well for, this gig life, was that hustle. And, in New York, everybody has a side hustle. I just have a life of side hustles. But
because the reality is that there are endless other jobs that are easier to get, that pay well, that have benefits.
Yes.
The only reason you would want to do a job like this is because you love it.
You have to really love it. But on that topic of other jobs, I've compiled like a little rundown of jobs in fashion history that some of them are more stable than this crazy existence. Because, you know, we just talked about the difference between fashion history and dress history. But even within that, there's all of these other facets that you can engage with. So there's the material culture approach. So that's a lot of like museum practitioners, people who like to work with objects. So conservators, collections managers, goodness, all of basically hands-on professionals who go to the object first. There are those who reside in the field of sociology, like I said, like subcultural theory, those people that ask the why, you know, different sects of society dress the way they do. And actually at FIT, the history of art department actually shares office with the sociology department. Right. We're all, well, in the before times, we were all, you know, in there together. So yes, there's the theoretical side, there's the art historical side. A lot of early fashion or dress historians were actually art historians that just happened to focus on aspects of dress in paintings, photography, etc. And actually most people that came into my graduate program were art historians. And I was like the ragtag theatrical girl. And I kind of had a chip on my shoulder about it, that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not an academic.
Oh my God, still.
Yeah.
I still have that.
Yeah.
That's imposter syndrome. That never goes away.
Yeah, I know, right? But other types of jobs. So yeah, so in museums, there are the curators, and that's, you know, the job that everybody wants. The curators, the ones who care for the collection, who research it, who put together these exhibitions, who write academically and publish, you know, either catalogs or, you know, what have you. But within that, there's also conservators who actually, those are the scientists who go in and like test dye particles and, you know, reconstruct, you know, lace trimmings. And I should actually note that upon entering the FIT program, we were required to have previous college level chemistry, which I did not. So I had to knock out those prerequisites before I got there, but it's because your first semester, you're in the conservation lab identifying fibers under a microscope. So that's a really weird skill that I have now. Haven't used it yet. Wait, no, I've used it once. So, and then there are collections managers. Those are the caretakers of the actual objects who, you know, make sure everything is being hung or stored properly. They manage all the databases. And those are like, if you can get those jobs, those are real like full-time with benefits jobs. But they're rather few and far between. And so, you know, if you can snag one, lucky you. But another growing field is fashion archives. And this is where, you know, those hard skills come into play because of this like explosion of awareness when it comes to, you know, museum exhibitions. Suddenly designers are finding it necessary to start their own archives so that for their future retrospective, they have everything in pristine condition from, you know, the history of all of their brand. And so they are hiring, you know, fashion historians, archivists who know how to care for and research these objects. And so I'd say almost every big fashion house has, you know, an internal archive department now. And so that's I'd say the fastest growing part of the field, and more lucrative because it's fashion, AKA real money. not nonprofit money. But as we said, there are these new fields. There's YouTube, there are podcasts. I am hoping that we break into television soon. So if anybody...
I think we will. Look at A Stitch in Time. It's like literally everywhere.
This is me putting that out there. I'm ready to do a TV show. If anybody.
Although in a weird way, like, do you not think the internet's the new frontier?
It
like,
is.
You keep asking me, would you, when you get your Netflix show? I'm like, no, then Netflix gets all the revenue. YouTube is mine. Like,
it's true. Well, and
I have all say over this. I get to keep all the revenue.
That's the thing we should discuss, because working under a bigger corporation like Glamour and Condé Nast, I relinquish all of that control.
Well, there's also a danger in that, because then depending on who's running that, if they're not in dress history, you know, if they have more of an eye to mass marketing, they have the power. We've had this conversation privately, but, you know, you have overlords having the power to cut and, you know, eliminate, rearrange things in editing that then may undermine the information that you're trying to convey. And then people well, they either get the wrong information, they start understanding the wrong information, or they're like, that's wrong, and they start coming for you.
Yes, which, you know, I feel like is the bane of my existence, but it works for me, because honestly, I don't know how you manage generating all of your own content and being the PR department and the editing department and the research department. I'm able to do this kind of because I just have to like come in and do the thing, and then they take care of the rest. But it does come, it's a trade-off.
Yeah. Sure. Well, like it's a full-time job. What I do is like I don't have 100 million other projects that I'm working on because I physically cannot. Like, I spend 4 days in editing for one video. Yeah. It takes me 2 months to shoot a video because that's how long it takes to make the garment. But like, I mean, I enjoy all those parts of the process, and I'm trained in all parts of those processes. Not everyone likes the editing, but the difference would be then, you know, effectively you as the creator putting together a production team, hiring an editor, hiring the PR people that work for you as the content creator, as the dress historian, fashion-centric content production creator, mastermind, criminal, evil scientist, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But, you know, not having, you know, a TV network like Netflix. For example, no hate on Netflix, but, you know, Netflix are focused on something else. Yeah. They're focused on not on educating the population on dress history, but on how much money can we make off of this. Yeah. And they're going to have different goals, and they're going to be like, this isn't interesting, cut the explanation of that stitch because it's boring, even though that's necessary to, I don't know, learning, whatever. So it's just putting together a production team that can do this stuff with the right intentions.
Yeah, and I do think, I hope, at least, I've been trying to get these other companies that, yes, have other goals, but to help them understand where we're coming from. And I will say that the teams that I've worked with at Glamour have been very understanding that, you know, I usually review, you know, multiple cuts before it's published. And with the Netflix argument, in working on shows for Netflix, like, I won't lie, that Netflix money is good. And that's what allows me to do other things. But no, I do think they're growing pains, and but we're ready to grow if anybody is ready to give us a television show.
Well, not only I feel like the public interest in dress history has just exploded in the last 4 years alone. Like, it's coming.
Yeah. So yes, what's the next thing on our list?
A bit of myth busting.
Myth busting. We love myth busting. So this is a question that we've talked about this privately. What does it mean to be an expert?
Oh my God. Cry. Is there such thing? Is there a person who knows everything about a subject? Yeah. But is that really what an expert means? Like, it's kind of what it implies. And if you call yourself an expert,
gosh, I'm an expert in nothing.
Exactly. Neither am I. But there's the whole, like, this is the myth of expert, but there's this psychological phenomenon of like social proof building credibility. So and in today's era, that tends to mean numbers and analytics. Like, oh, you have a massive Instagram following, that must mean you're an expert. Oh, you have a massive YouTube following. Like, we've had this conversation like over DMs about all of this way previously, but like about how when I would read some comments on some stuff, you know, some like dress history stuff on YouTube that wasn't me, but like people would go into the comments saying, why don't you get a real expert? Why don't you get Bernadette Banner? Why don't you get Carolina Zabrowska? Why don't you get, you know, a real expert? And that first of all made me laugh, but also kind of made me cry because first of all, I'm not an expert. I don't have like academic credibility in this, but because I have a following, like people assume that I'm an expert. Whereas like one bit of Googling of the person's name who's talking in the video brings up the fact that they like have this many credible you know, degrees in this and they teach history at this place, and it's like they're hugely qualified, but because nobody knows their name,
it is very it's been a challenging journey.
Yeah. So it's like not only do you have to like get the jobs, but then you have to fight for credibility.
Yeah.
Until people start to know your name.
Which is, it's difficult in, you know, just the climate that we live in, and especially now that we're like living in quarantine times, that you're not, your entire presence like is being forced online. Yeah. And, you know, up until the past 2 years, like so much of my work was offline. And so, yeah, when they use the term expert, I don't get to decide these things. It's the powers that be that decide. I think like generally the term expert means like this person is somehow accredited outside of this. We're not going to tell you what that is, but I think it's intentionally vague.
Yeah.
But I do think like to be an expert or a participant, I'd rather use that phrase.
Yes.
Participate in the growing field of fashion history or dress history. I think there are the people that are actively growing it. So people that are writing and publishing and generating, you know, more contributing to the discourse that ultimately benefits the entire community. But also that depends on the consumers of you know, that content. And so everybody has a part to play. And so, you know, even the people that are encountering fashion history for the first time through these YouTube videos, they're part of that growth. Mm-hmm. And so I am very, even though like, you know, there is that internet insecurity that's kind of built into all of it, I am very thankful that there is a very enthusiastic community that keeps me employed.
Yes. Yes. And it's rapidly growing. Like this is the other thing, is that I feel like there's this ingrained attitude within, maybe it's a bit outdated, maybe I'm just accrediting this to academia, it applies to everything, but this feeling of competition, you know how much I hate this, but people often put themselves in the mindset of like, there is a pie, the field is a pie, there's only so much, and you have to claim as much of the pie as you can. Where in reality, and I think we, at least I may be misinterpreting this, but on the internet side, I feel like we've proven that there's no such thing as a pie. Mm-hmm. If the pie doesn't feel big enough, you make more pie. You find more people, you create more public interest, and then there's more pie and more for everyone.
Yes.
But the reality is there's so much of dress history. I know like people ask me all the time, like, why don't you do a thing on the 50s? Why don't you do, you know, a thing of like, what would someone in Turkey in 1943 do? Like my field of study, and I've only been at this for a couple of years, is English and American dress up to World War I. I've had to limit it down to that specificness because you can't study more than that in a lifetime. There's so much to be studied in dress history, so many different cultures and geographical locations and time periods to focus on, and different, you know, aspects, whether you want to focus on tailoring, men's dress, embroidery, lace. There are historians who have solely studied lace. Like there's so much to be studied, and it's such a new and understudied field. Like there's room for everyone.
And I think that's the most exciting part, is that you know, now that there is this growing interest, people are maybe encountering it for the first time as, you know, this whole fully formed field. But the reality is, this is like so just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much untrodden scholarship that needs to happen. So it's still exciting because it feels like you're constantly on the precipice of something. But on that topic of why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? I mean, like as a graduate student, we said that, I told you this before, that there's some classes or semesters that you're focusing on the caves to present. Like, how can anybody know any of that? And so, you know, we are expected to come out of that program with a basic understanding of all of it. Like, fine, I can talk about ancient Egyptian dress. Am I an expert in it? Absolutely not. And the thing that my like life mantra in academia and otherwise is, you know, in the process of like this continuous hunger for learning is the more you know what you don't know.
Yes.
And the more that I
learn, yes.
Yeah. The more I'm exposed to, the more I realize that there are people who know a lot more than me. And I do think it's important, you know, to pay it forward to those people. So often if I get like, you know, a news request to talk about, I don't know, what was one that I got recently? Oh, the revival of pre-Raphaelite fashion. That's not my area of expertise, but I know somebody else who does specialize in that. So I'm going to send them that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I was consulting for that glamour thing, I told them, this is where I study. And they came back to me with like Greece. And I was like, find someone else. Because there's someone else who can cover that way better than I can. And I know that.
Yeah. And so they asked me to do.
Yeah. Like, they asked you to do it or something.
They asked me to do Mulan. And I said like, oh, no.
Yeah.
This is not me. But that's the thing, being comfortable saying like, that is not what I specialize in. Yes. It has been a very important step to furthering one's career. And you know what, someday that might be within your wheelhouse, but that's what's exciting. You never stop learning.
Yeah.
Does anybody, I don't know, have we bored them all to tears?
I think people are interested. I'm not really following along with the chat, but we can take a couple of questions.
Yes, because I think we're at the end of the outline besides the current projects and the Q&A.
Yeah. But
yes, current projects.
Oh yeah, tell us about what you're currently working on.
Currently at this very moment, I'm currently writing for an encyclopedia, which is very exciting and very like imposter syndrome-y. But yeah, my writing deadline's on Saturday. So the second I get off this call, I am going to go back to my encyclopedia writing. This is for the upcoming Encyclopedia of Film and Television Costume.
That sounds like extremely exciting.
So excited. And on that note, I knew going into grad school that I wanted to find a way to bring these two aspects of my career together, the costume design and the fashion history. And so I'm very thankful that I found a weird way to do it. And so in doing things like the encyclopedia, but also the Glamour series, I feel like I get to talk about costume design and fashion history, shooting in another episode in a couple weeks. I don't know. Oh gosh, I'm not ready. But yes, it's a good one. I can't say what it is, but you know what it is, and it's a good one. So yes, I've got that, but honestly, the big thing is OMG, this fall semester might kill me. It might, because we are all.
Oh no, yeah.
I am teaching 5 classes between 2 universities. So, you know, that's like a cool, how many students is that? Like 150 students.
Yeah, well, this is a good segue to a question. Someone's asked, any thoughts on how the pandemic will change this field?
Besides like the number of jobs going from 4 to 3, I actually do think that there will be a lot more of this remote content being generated. Yeah. I have been very, very, very lucky. I cannot say that enough, that I have actually been working more since the pandemic started. Yeah. But I do think that, you know, the outlook for museums is kind of bleak, and I can't even think about it or else I'll cry. But you know, hopefully we bounce back. I am like still holding by that theory that like when we move past this, then there will be a resurgence of culture and art and the need for that kind of yeah, relief.
I hope so too, but also I found that, well, I think the internet, like this is kind of a sign that the internet is the future. I don't like to say that because that sounds dumb, but because I know your internet work has picked up, my internet work has stayed exactly the same. I think there's something to be said in finding a way to not only, well, there's something in the mass sharing of the internet that not only, well, it like broadens the field.
Yeah.
It puts your work out to more people, which in whatever capacity that work means. Anyway, my answer to this question is the internet.
But also, I'm just going to say it, putting your work out there on the internet takes a remarkable amount of courage. And it was really scary at first. But I do think that, I mean, I feel like academia just historically has been like mired in this cult of exclusivity. And I kind of hope that this open source moment kind of does more to grow public interest.
Yeah. So there have been some questions on a two-sided question. If you're a young person, what would you recommend are some steps that like young people right now can take to get into dress history?
And what is young? What is youth?
Right. I would say probably pre-college or at least just out of undergrad and potentially open to master's programs. Because nowadays there are master's programs that focus in dress history. I was actually scheduled to go do it's not scheduled, but like it was on my like future track record to go and do the dress and textile history program in Glasgow in 2019. But then YouTube became a job and I was like, well, I'm employed.
Well,
but that's a question now.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. What's my advice for young people? These are questions I get a lot too, and I do get a little gun shy about answering them because I don't. Again, like everyone's path to this field is so unique that I don't want to be prescriptive at all. But in the before times, my answer would be go to everything, and you know, and talk to everyone. When I was at the MFA, like, you know, I was clocking 60, 70 hours a week because I had like 3 different jobs within that one institution, but I still made it a point that when, as an employee, I could go to these lectures. So every single lecture that came through, I went to them all. And I think it's important to just be open to learning from everything. Because it's not going to be what you expect. If you told me 5 years ago that I would be, you know, making videos for YouTube, I would not have believed you. If you told me 5 years ago if you told me 5 years ago that I would be teaching at a university, I wouldn't believe you either. But I think it's important that I think both of our paths really testify to the idea that every single experience that you have working from like retail to, you know, your dream job, that all adds up to create this unique skill set that will make you able to find your own niche in the field.
Yeah. I just had something I was going to say and I just completely exited my brain. Oh, no, it came back for 2 seconds and then it left again. But, oh, yeah. Okay, so I had heard this term passed around once briefly and it was just stuck in my head, but increase your surface area for potential.
Yes, that's...
The more you spread yourself, I mean, I don't want to use the term spread yourself out because don't spread yourself out too thin. Don't wear yourself out. Don't burn yourself out. But the more opportunities you say yes to, and the more things you try, and the more experiences that you do, like, hey, here's an opportunity to like go to London for 4 weeks. As a supreme introvert, someone who does not like leaving her house, who now works from home for a reason, the thought of getting on a plane for 6 hours and living somewhere else for 4 weeks was the most terrifying thing. But it was also the most wonderful opportunity. Like there was no way that I was going to say no to that. And I ended up staying the whole time. And that was like the future of my career. Yeah. So like, do the thing. I know that's like my catchphrase, but do the thing. Do all this stuff.
I know. I say, say yes. Yeah. When you're young, that's what I told myself, like in my early 20s, say yes to everything. And yes, that led to a lot of burnout, which I don't advocate for. But yes, saying yes. I did not know you studied, or you did that in London. I studied abroad my junior year of college. And that was like a beautiful dream that will never be recreated. Because Boston University, I should say this, Boston University has an excellent study abroad program, and half the people in that program were not students of BU. They were from other schools. We had a gorgeous building in South Kensington. I like woke up, like opened the windows to my flat, and there was the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Oh my God.
It was a dream. And while I was there, it was part internship program. We took classes. And so, getting to take classes at the Globe was insane. But I worked at, my internship was at Angels.
Oh my God.
So other costume house. It's funny because that year I went from Western costume to Angels.
Yeah, the two biggest costume houses.
There's a total rivalry though. So it did not work in my favor. But I did. I got to, work on whatever came through the costume house. So I was very, very lucky that I got to work on Downton at like the height of its popularity. It was a dream. But yeah, you never know what's going to come your way. And like, had I known that designer that I worked with at Western Costume, however many years ago, would now be calling me to do research for a new Netflix show that's now Emmy nominated, like you never know, when people are going to call you. And so it's really important to maintain those professional relationships.
Yeah. Or it's calculated luck, I would like to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are things that you can't necessarily control, opportunities that come along, but somewhere along the line, you have put the pieces into place so that thing could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like you did go to things so that you could meet the person, so that 10 years from now, they could give you the job that will win you an Oscar.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And just to be prepared.
Also, yeah.
For if I had met the curator at the Museum of Fine Arts at not that time, when I didn't have that, unique set of experiences, then it wouldn't have worked out in my favor. So yeah, just being prepared for any opportunity that may come your way. That's really vague advice. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But again, like, it's kind of a try something, because there's no one set path, and your guess is as good as ours. You can't necessarily recreate someone's exact experience in this world. Someone actually told me that once, but like, it's never going to work the same way. So you kind of do have to form your own path, but with the destination, if you have the destination in mind, because it's all about, I don't want to get like mystical about like, put it out there into the universe, because the universe will hear and return it to you. It's not so much the universe, so much as the people around you who are listening.
Mm-hmm.
If I had not expressed interest in historical dress in school, the professors who were listening, who were there to help me, wouldn't have known to be like, oh, actually, I know someone who knows someone who can help you. Yeah. People love to help. As someone who has now gotten into a place, I love to still help people. Like, it brings me joy because I know that there were people who helped me get here.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, one kind of relating to that is it too late to get into dress history?
Too late as an individual or too late as a field?
Well, I think they mean like as an individual, like too late in life.
Oh my gosh, no. There were people, in my graduate classes who were already retired. There were people in my graduate classes who were my parents' age. So it ranged from people straight out of undergrad, which I'm just going to go on the record and say I don't advise.
Get some experience first.
Well, I have to say that the years in between my undergrad and my master's degree, those years working at the museum, like those were the years that primed me for getting the most out of that education because I had a point of reference.
Well, people tell me I did my whole life backwards by like working first and then going to school, but it's the best thing I ever did. Because
you know what you want.
I knew what was out there. Well, I knew what I needed to learn. I knew what I didn't know and I knew what I had to focus on. But also there was no pressure to like, I just want to go work on Broadway. F school, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm out of here. Like, I could appreciate it because it's like, I know what's out there. Let me just calm down and go to school for a bit. Anyway, go on. I just interrupted you.
Oh, no, I think that was it. I totally forgot. Anyway, are there any questions?
All right, so I'm just seeing a lot of questions that are kind of relating to stuff that we've already spoken about. A lot of people asking about schools and colleges.
This is not an FIT commercial, but I highly recommend you attend that program.
I highly recommend NYU. So.
It's funny, the graduate programs are very much like rivals.
Oh yeah, haha. But there was a question earlier that's actually kind of relevant, but someone who was saying, I feel like you need to be in New York or LA. All the opportunities are in New York and LA. I will say, not necessarily. Mm-hmm. I'm finding, for what I want to do in like World War II stuff, I'm finding it difficult to find opportunities in New York to the point where I've applied for a visa to live in London because there's just more opportunities over there. Just on the path that I've taken and the people that I've met and the opportunities that I've been presented, there's more opportunities for me in London. So I think it just depends where you are, who you know, where you want to end up.
Yeah, where you want to end up, because I have to say, I just celebrated my 4-year New York anniversary last week. And I do feel like before the Rona, New York has been very good to me. And it sounds cliche, but I feel like the number of opportunities that have been presented to me, since I landed here with my $3, 2 bags, and 1 knee, they've like exceeded, the opportunities that, I even had in LA or Boston. That being said, like, would also love to study in London because I miss it. Maybe for PhD times, but no. And as we said, as more of the field is going online, I don't necessarily think that you have to be in one place or another. The programs are there though. All the saturation of like dress history programs are in New York or London or
Scotland. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Well, the internet is a wide world. Mm-hmm. I believe that there are upcoming opportunities and this is an expanding field. So
yeah.
Right. Well, I think are we good?
Yeah.
Do you have anything further you want to add?
Oh God.
Here's the world of opportunity.
No, the world of opportunity. No, just that I am deeply humbled and honored that you asked me to be your guest for this. And I hope that it shed some light on, you know, some of the mysticism surrounding the field, but also, like, you know where to find us. I do my best to answer questions.
Not always 100% possible, but we try.
No.
So I guess I will thank you for joining us on this
thank you.
Fabulous panel. We've had fun.
I know.
I hope you guys learned some stuff, and I hope it was encouraging. We tried to, before we got on this call, there was a little bit of a discussion of how do we balance the reality versus not being discouraging, because it can be done. The fact that both of us are sitting here as success stories proves that it can be done. It can be done if you have determination and a bit of craftiness, a bit of cleverness, and you know, if you just don't give up.
And passion, you need a lot of that, because that's what makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, and one thing that we sort of left off and never elaborated on is the question of internships. If you are capable of taking internships and working for free and volunteering, absolutely do it. This is a tricky subject. It's a touchy subject for me because it's one that I really dislike. I really dislike the practice of internships because I feel like there's an imbalance of opportunity. The people who can afford to take internships therefore get the jobs, the opportunities that come from that. So there's also the whole, hey, unpaid internships
bad.
So personally, I'm an advocate for not unpaid internships. Like, I personally don't take interns, you know, pay people living wages, pay people wages. We need people of all ethnicities, all cultural interests, all cultural backgrounds in general. This is like a whole different can of worms that we're going into now, but
this is our call to action to diversify the field.
Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is to that right now, because I don't know how it's different now versus when I was an intern years and years and years ago. But I would say don't do it any longer than you have to. If
I did it for too long, I will say I did it for too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, pay your interns, everybody, please.
Pay your interns, and if you're someone who like can work as an intern, there's something to be said for advocating for, you know, hey, we should do some stuff. Anyway.
So this will be up on your channel for a week if you've missed it.
Yeah, no, it's just, like this is a whole different like world that we could get into, but maybe this is another topic that we should address in another video. Is labor wages. Anyway, so this video will be up on my channel until Sunday the 9th of August, so 1 week from this coming Sunday. After that, it depends. There's a number of things that it depends on. This live stream will be coming down. There are, with different live streams, copyright issues with content use. I don't think this is anyway, but also like whatever the content, we just have to go back and review, whatever. This live stream will be coming down. Whether or not it gets edited and re-uploaded is still up for debate. So
watch while you can.
I would recommend watching it now. But for the most part, the live streams on my channel will be coming down on the 9th of August, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It's not like that I want to take this away from you. It's just that there's other stuff behind.
Well, you're about to do like 8 more of these panels, right? So
yeah. So if you would like to see more, this is obviously I think this is only the second live stream event of COVID. I don't know, but there's loads more stuff. There's, I think, 2 more streams happening later this evening on other people's channels. I think Noelle's got one and Snappy Dragon's got one. And then we will also be doing more live streams all weekend. I'm back on Kathy's channel tomorrow morning to talk about confidence and putting yourself out there. And then I am on Snappy Dragon's channel tomorrow afternoon to talk about disability in costuming. So I hope I will see you there. And I hope you will go off and do learn some other fun stuff on other people's channels and watch other people's videos, because everyone's got such great stuff going on this weekend. So thank you very much, Raissa, for joining me on this fantastic adventure, this wonderful topic. I hope we've inspired some new dress history people to get into this field, because I want to say, honestly, like there's so much that needs to be studied by people, again, like reiterating, by people of all cultural backgrounds. Please. There's a reason why like Western dress history is so widely covered, is because that's what most people study. We need people of all backgrounds doing this.
Come
join us. So, and yeah, we are constantly, those of us who are in dress history are constantly trying to innovate and come up with new ways to actually sustain ourselves and make livings doing this. We're here to help you. I want to say, like, you know, at least it's my mission in life is to like crush competition. I want to help other people get into this field. So anyway, this is like just me just exploding now. So
thank you. Do I sign off? Do you sign off? I don't know.
I have no idea how to end these. See, I just cut to black and that's it, but this is a live stream and I don't know how to end stuff. So I guess I'll just hit end stream. So thank you for joining us, and it's been fun. We'll see you soon.